Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Audrey Ray. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an executive coach and I specialize in higher education leadership. Today, I want to talk to you about time management, what gets in the way, and how to reclaim control over your schedule. So let's talk about life in higher education and tell me if you can relate to this. Having a heavy workload, right? A lot of work to do, multiple responsibilities, a long to-do list. Feeling pulled in multiple directions. Maybe there are faculty members that need your attention, or maybe students. It could be some of your employees, peers, supervisors. There's just a lot that is calling for your attention. Getting interrupted throughout the day. Again, all those people as well as incoming emails and unexpected situations and crises are causing many interruptions throughout your day. Having many meetings. I almost wrote having too many meetings because honestly, when I know when I schedule coaching sessions with my clients, they're always telling me about all the meetings they had that day. They just have so many meetings all the time. And I worked in higher education myself. It's actually one of the reasons why I was not as happy as I could have been, is how much time we spent in meetings. So tell me if you can relate. Put that in your comments. Do you also have a lot of meetings? Feeling stress and pressure. When there's so many demands placed on you, it makes sense to feel stress and pressure. You're working on high stake activities and a lot of people are expecting a lot from you. And thinking about work, even when you are not working, does that happen to you? So you're off the clock and maybe you don't even need to be checking your messages, but you're thinking about it. So you're grabbing your phone and you feel the need to look at what's happening, or maybe you're thinking about a meeting you had today, something that just happened, a problem that you'd like to solve, or maybe what you have coming up tomorrow. You may be a little anxious about something scheduled tomorrow. So tell me if you can relate. I'd love to see that in the comments. I want to share with you this little cartoon. I love the Awkward Yeti. Honestly, it's hilarious. I love their work. So here is what my clients tell me, and it's such a good illustration for that. So you see here how the brain is showing that there is this much to do, right? There's a lot of work to do, but there's only this much time to do it. See the little cup, a little bit of time? And now observe, it's simply impossible to do it all. So you see a little brain that's filling up the cup, and of course it's overflowing, it's making a big mess, and the heart is like, whoa, how much time do you spend on this demonstration? And the brain says, all of it. And I find that really funny because people who are very busy and typically feel they don't have enough time spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about how busy they are, how much they have to do, and there is so much, and again, complaining and talking about it. And sometimes I ask them, can you imagine how much time you would free up if you actually never spoke even one word about how busy you are and how much you have to do? And think about also the energy that's wasted, feeling heavy because you're thinking about all the stuff you have to do instead of working on one at a time. So anyway, I thought it was pretty funny, and you probably can relate. And if not, you may be somebody else that you work with. All right, so here's the thing. This is what I call a knowledge action gap when it comes to time management, because the issue is rarely that people don't really know what to do, at least not with my clients. All of my clients are leaders in higher education. They read all the books on leadership. They read every day. They keep learning. They know all the theory. So it's not really that they don't know how to save time. I mean, of course, I still have plenty of tips and little strategies that I share with them, but it's really not because they don't know what to do. The issue is that they're not implementing what they know that they could be doing or should be doing. I don't really like to talk about should because it makes people feel guilty and I don't like it, but you get my point. It's if you want to have more free time, you have to be more self-disciplined. So why aren't we more self-disciplined? Today, I want to talk to you about those 5 unconscious obstacles to effective time management. So grab something to take notes because I am sure that some of it will be really helpful today. It's going to help you understand your behavior as well as other people's behaviors. Okay, so another little cartoon from my favorite Awkward Yeti. So here you have the brain, the heart that starts by saying, oh, things are going pretty great. And the brain agrees, says, yep, things are basically under control, right? And that doesn't even happen much, but imagine that it does. So you have a day, maybe in the morning, where things are going well, your heart says things are good, your brain says, yes, everything is fine. And then what happens? So you see in the next, at the bottom here, the brain looking at how to overthink everything, and the heart looking at instant gratification. And this is so true too, because there may be days where you may not even have that much of a crisis, but what happens is you start to overthink. What if something goes wrong? Or maybe I have to do that stuff and I don't really want to, and you're giving yourself reasons why you can procrastinate, or maybe you make yourself scared of something that's coming up. Maybe you're presenting to the board of trustees and thinking about everything that can go wrong, which happens sometimes. People spend a lot of energy worrying about everything that can go wrong, and that takes a lot of time, and it makes them less capable of doing a great job. So you see how the brain can really get in the way. And also the heart was instant gratification. So you picture this, imagine that you're sitting down to write a report and you don't really want to do it. So your heart's going to say, hey, let's check social media, or, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday, or I wonder what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. Let's try that. Or I should give a call to somebody, right? So your heart is always going to find instant gratification. So this is why we have so much trouble with time management and self-discipline, is that we are complex and emotional creatures of habit, and our hearts and our brains have agendas of their own. Okay. So the first one that I want to share with you is seeking perfection, and that goes hand in hand with control. Does this happen to you sometimes, where perhaps you spend too much time on projects? And that can be that you are adding unnecessary complexity to projects. That happens quite a bit, especially when we're trying to seek perfection. We're trying to always look at what can be better. Anybody who also has issues with self-doubt is going to overcomplicate everything and adding so much complexity only because they want it to be perfect. They may be talking to a lot of people to get some suggestions, and something that could be done in 15 minutes can quickly escalate into a 4-hour project. Another reason too to spend too much time on project is double and triple checking everything. So sometimes I see people do that. They will proofread and read again and change something and improve something, and it's just too much. So I understand that you want to do a good job, but again, if you're spending 3 times, 4 times, 10 times longer than a project requires, you're really creating an issue here. Something else that's very, very, very common is having difficulty delegating and trusting others. There are people who say that if you want something done well, you have to do it yourself. And I sure hope you're not in that category, because I know it's possible that you have employees who are not very good, not very reliable. It happens. But this is not what I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about underperforming employees that cannot be trusted. That would be a whole different webinar. Today, I'm talking about people who have difficulty trusting people who would be trustworthy or trustworthy enough, and who just really hate to delegate. So if this is you, you have to realize that if you feel that you're working too many hours, this is probably one of the reasons why. Something else that comes from seeking perfection is creating delays and creating bottlenecks. So you have to really ask yourself, is that even worth it to try to make something better if you are creating problems, if you're creating bottlenecks, if things are slowing down, if you're becoming a problem for other people? Is that really better? I would say probably not. Another thing that comes from seeking perfection is requesting unnecessary changes. That's something I find really fascinating, when people can't make the difference between their personal preference, which adds no value, it's just how they like things, but it really doesn't make anything better at all, versus an improvement that truly brings value to whoever is going to use whatever the project is. And that's an issue sometimes for people who struggle with perfection and control, is everything that they prefer becomes a necessity, even if they will acknowledge the fact that it doesn't really bring value. So those are things to keep in check. Second one, procrastination and avoidance. So this happens a lot when we lack interest in a project or motivation. So maybe there are issues on your campus reducing your motivation, which will create less engagement, less desire to do the work. But sometimes it is truly about the task. Maybe it's that annual report you have to work on, or maybe you feel like a bean counter needing to quantify all sorts of measurable outcomes that are really boring, just something that doesn't interest you. So what is going to happen in this situation is that person is going to choose something that's easy or that's fun or that's familiar. So I'm not saying that you're going to be not working or you're going to be goofing around on social media and arguing about politics and just wasting your work day. But maybe you're going to be hyper focused on answering emails because this is something where there's always more of. And it gives people an impression that they're working. Why? Because answering emails is part of your job. You want to be accessible. You need to answer questions. There are people who depend on you. So it's easy to create that illusion that answering emails for hours and hours and hours and hours is doing your job. But if it is an excuse to procrastinate, it is really an issue. And you know what it's like when somebody emails you too much and you reply right away, you're basically rewarding that behavior. If they start writing back and forth, it becomes almost like messaging. And if it's excessive and you're engaging in it, it's not going to go away. So you have to be very mindful in how you choose email communication and how you respond. Another one too is rationalizing why it's okay to wait. Maybe it's not due for another week, right? Or maybe if you wait, you'll feel better. Maybe you'll be a little more interested tomorrow. Maybe you're going to be in the mood. You can find all sorts of reasons why you should wait and why it's okay to wait. And the truth is, no, just do what you need to do, because trust me, procrastination is never going to feel better tomorrow. Waiting longer is not going to make you feel better. Something else too is intimidating tasks that can create self-doubt. So imagine if you've been asked to do something and it's the very first time and you're not really sure how to go about it. Or maybe that's something that you've done before, but now it's new and it's different. And there's just something there that is very uncomfortable. So whether it's hard or it's new or it's different, but there's something that's making you doubt yourself. It's making you doubt your ability to get it done quickly and successfully. So you're going to want to procrastinate. Something else that can create massive procrastination is if you are subjected to a lot of criticism. So it can be your own self-criticism. So many leaders are way too hard on themselves, and they are so self-critical that it's borderline being a bully to themselves. I mean, it's pretty horrible to hear their self-talk. They tend to have empathy for others, but when it comes to themselves, there's no empathy. They're very critical. They're always focused on what they did wrong. They're beating themselves up. So of course, that's going to create procrastination. And same thing if it is coming from somebody else. So let's say if you have a supervisor who is perhaps micromanager or very critical or just never happy or always finds something wrong with everything you do, of course you're going to procrastinate, because completion of a project means you're getting closer to getting beat up. So of course, nobody really wants to do that. So fear of failure is going to create some sort of paralysis. Oh, this is sad, but don't worry, it's going to get better, more optimistic as we keep moving forward in the presentation. All right, third one, the desire to please. It's funny, there are people who just self-diagnose or self-label as pleasers. They'll say, Audrey, I can't say no to people. I really want to make people happy. I'm a pleaser. That's just the only way. And the thing is, if it's critically important for you to please everybody and that leads you to saying yes to everything, well, what happens? Typically, people in that situation are going to overcommit, but then they can't deliver. So guess what? By wanting to please everybody, you said yes to everybody, but now if you can't deliver, you have a problem and people are not pleased. Trust me, when pleasers, I hate that word. I don't like labels in general, but I'll just go with it because fortunately, that's how people talk. So if pleasers make promises or just agree to certain things, and that creates expectations that are repeatedly where there's no follow through, it's very irritating. And trust me, it's not pleasing at all. So it becomes a much bigger problem. And then there are others who actually somehow magically manage to do it all. And the only way to do it all is to basically have no life and never sleep. And basically work is your entire life. So maybe you're not letting people down, but I would say you're letting yourself down, because life is about so much more than work. And then if you have a spouse, children, loved ones, I mean, anybody, even even a dog, even if you just have a pet, you know, there are people, or there's animals, there's creatures, there's beings that need you, and you've got to stop working sometimes. It's really not okay to be so out of balance. Something else related to the desire to please is not having healthy boundaries. Sometimes people don't really realize what is appropriate or not appropriate to ask of you. So it becomes your job to tactfully educate them on what's okay and not okay to ask. And it's not going to be confrontational. It's not going to be ugly at all. It's just finding that tactful way to sort of train people to stop certain behaviors that honestly you should never be subjected to begin with. Sometimes people's requests are appropriate, but it's too much, or it's going to take too much of your time, or maybe they're mismanaging their work style is complete chaos and they're pulling you into that chaos. So again, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Extremely important. You're never going to do well with your time management if you don't have boundaries. And I know this doesn't feel good when you don't know how, but you can reach out to me and I'll show you. It's really not hard, and it never creates problems. If anything, it creates structure and clear expectation, so everybody wins. Another issue with the desire to please is making unnecessary sacrifices to be liked. Do you do that sometimes, where maybe you go above and beyond and you bend over backwards? And all those expressions are so funny to me, at least. The bottom line being that perhaps you do a lot and it's really not necessary. You want to be liked, you want to be appreciated, but this is more about your relationship with yourself, which is something else I can help you with, but you don't want to have to do so much just to be liked. This is about self-worth, self-esteem, and this is something you'll find within yourself. All right, number 4, need for connection. So I'm laughing about this because people like to say, oh, I'm an introvert, so I don't really need a lot of interaction with people. And others say, oh, I'm an extrovert and I love talking and I love people. And again, I'm not a big fan of labels, but you definitely need to be able to know yourself and observe your behavior and ask yourself if what you do out of habit is truly serving you or not. So there are people who spend too much time interacting with other people. And when I say too much, you know, it's interesting because it's such a subjective matter, how much is enough and how much is too much. But I would say if it causes you to have stress and anxiety because you can't get your work done and you basically don't really get to get much done until it's after 5 or 6 and the phone stops ringing and people are not bugging you anymore, you shouldn't have to be in that situation. So I would say that's too much. So what happens sometimes is people may have an open door policy if they're on campus. If it's during COVID, I'm doing this video in 2020. I don't know when you're watching it. Right now, everybody's home, but the principle is the same, is that if somebody has an open door policy and it becomes an implicit permission to interrupt and distract, even without a valid reason, that's creating a lot of problems. So imagine if you're working from home, same thing. Can people call you whenever, and you get a million Zoom calls that were not scheduled and phone calls, a ton of interruptions? That's still really an issue, but sometimes we indulge in it. Some people really like to have that contact and to have this time. So whether it is chit-chatting on campus or Zoom calls for those of us working from home. So what happens is those meetings, those phone calls, those Zoom calls, that could be 15 minutes turn into 30 or 45 or an hour. And it's really fascinating to see this year how there are people who feel so good connecting, and they just see you on the computer screen and they're like, oh, so let me tell you about my weekend. And they feel like, oh yay, somebody who's different than just the people that I'm living with. And it's just too much time bonding and talking, and I think it's important to fulfill our needs. But again, let's get the work done first, and then we can go and be social and chit chat and enjoy each other. But we really need to get the work done first. Something else that happens with somebody who has a very strong need for connection is that sometimes they develop very strong friendships at work. And I'm not against being very friendly, but sometimes it makes supervision and accountability really awkward. So if you're too close with somebody, maybe you go on vacations together, maybe you've shared incredible details about your personal life, things that very few people know, but somehow your assistant knows and people on your campus knows. That can create quite a bit of issues too when it comes to time management. And you might say, well, help me connect the dots here. I don't see how that's related. When you're too close to somebody, it's a lot harder to, and I don't want to say enforce rules, that sounds horrible, but to really create expectations and keep them accountable. So if somebody is not taking their job seriously, if they're making excuses, not taking responsibility, and you're too close, now you're a good friend, and you're going to call them out on that, they may say, oh, well, this happened and this happened, and it's just excuses. You would not tolerate that from anybody else on campus, but because this is your friend, you're in that awkward situation. So what do? You start doing their work. You pick up whatever they dropped, and now you're doing the work of two people. So be really careful with that need for connection. You can meet that need in a healthy way. So there's just certain boundaries you don't want to cross. Okay, number 5. Actually, this one is predominant. It blows my mind how big this still is in higher education leadership. It's pride in being overworked. So think about that. There's still plenty of people that believe that extreme personal sacrifice is honorable. Think about that. Sacrifice, being a martyr, being a victim, being somebody who's completely selfless. So when that is somebody's identity, of course, they're not going to try to save time. They're not going to try to be more effective and productive, because that's where honor comes from. It's important. They need to sacrifice. If their days were actually easy, they would feel like something is missing. And then there's a lot of people, and honestly, I used to be one of them, like big time, where the self-worth is tied to hard work and how busy you are. And I know that when I was younger, I'm not that old, but seriously, 20 years ago, I was obsessed with hard work and working a lot. So there were times in my life where I had a full-time work in administration, plus going to school to get my EDD, plus doing consulting on the side to make money to pay for tuition because I didn't want to get a loan. So I didn't sleep basically for several years. It was absolutely insane, but somehow at the time, that was my value system. So, and it's very unhealthy. I definitely don't advise that, but it's still predominant, and I certainly can relate to it. For me, I had to get very tired. Basically, I had to get sick until my body said, you just can't do this anymore. And that's what forced me to change my belief system and change my habits. I hope you don't do that. Don't wait until you get sick. If you want to stay happy, stay healthy, and have some balance. All right, next thing. So finding work-life balance off-putting. Oh, it's weak, it's complacent, it's beneath you. Are you one of those people who feel like when people talk about work-life balance and going home on time and or working from home, but stopping working at 5 or 6 and trying to take time off on the weekends, not working too hard on the evenings, do you have judgment for that? Because if you still do, you have to evaluate that and really see where this is coming from, because when people feel that way, their time management never improves, because it would go against what they need in terms of their pride, their ego, their honor, their identity. And sometimes there are people who are sort of borderline, where they're like recovering workaholics, but now they're afraid of being judged. What if you stop working at 5 or 6, and what are people going to say? Right now, maybe not so much, because we're working from home, so they will know exactly what you're doing. But when you're in your office, if you are in your car ready to drive off campus at 5:05 every night, you're probably thinking somebody is watching and somebody is going to be judging you, and that's going to have repercussions. So I don't know the culture, so some of it could be real, But in terms of being afraid of criticism from others, you really have to start working on your own self-criticism and see what would be some standards and habits that fit for you, where you feel at peace with your decision and you can give yourself permission to work a little bit less without looking like a slacker. So anyway, I can help you with that if that's something that is tough for you. All right. So I want to know which of those 5s are true for you. So write it in the comments. Do you feel like you're seeking perfection and control? Do you feel like you tend to have an issue with avoidance and procrastination? Or maybe it's your desire to please. Or maybe it's your need for connection. Or maybe it's your pride in being overworked. And my guess will be it's probably more than one, because, well, that's just how it is with everyone I've ever spoken to. We usually have multiple ones that get in the way. And it's important to be able to figure out what's stopping you so that you can choose to change. All right, so now we're going to talk about taking back control. So how do you take back control? It's actually not that hard. Think about it. Number 1, you want to change the way you think, because your behavior comes from your beliefs, which influence what you're thinking. That's influencing the decisions that you make, the habits you have at work, and what you do all day. So you have to start by changing how you think. If you keep clinging to those exact same habits, limitations, or even excuses, nothing is going to change. You've got to be willing to open your mind to new ideas and doing things differently. And then, of course, you have to get organized, because those changes, you will only have you need to have a good plan in order to have a good implementation. And then, of course, there's follow through. Okay, so here we are again, a little cartoon from the Awkward Yeti. So here you see the heart goes, want. And the brain goes, no heart. It isn't the logical choice. But the heart says, but I still want, right? The heart wants what the heart wants. So even if with your mind, you're telling yourself, self-discipline, I'm going to follow through, I'm going to have a plan, I will do all the things exactly the way my coach helped me decide I should do, etc., etc. You know that your heart is still going to say, wait a minute, I want instant gratification, I want to play, I want fun, I want to spend time with people, I want to avoid the stuff that I don't enjoy doing. So we can't pretend it's not real, because it is real. And that is exactly why time management is so hard, is because of that inner conflict that you probably have. We all do. Your heart and your brain want different things. So willpower and self-discipline alone are not going to be enough if you have that conflict. What needs to happen is, first of all, that you question old assumptions and you change the way you think before you can change your behavior. And then also identify different ways to satisfy both your brain and your heart. I'm really not the kind of coach that will say, we're going to put aside everything that makes you happy, that gives you meaning. No, this is not, I'm not a fan of self-sacrificing in those ways. Is get your work done, yeah, but have your needs met, because you want to be fulfilled. You want to do work that is rewarding, and I want you to be happy. And honestly, when you're a leader, how you feel is so critically important. So we're going to take care of your brain and your heart too. All right, so here's an example. Imagine that this is your inner conflict. You want perfection, but time is limited. Perfection, not enough time. So what are you going to do? The false assumption is thinking that the extra time spent on a project is worthwhile. So if you're telling yourself the more time I spend, the better it's going to be, that's actually almost never true. Of course, you need an adequate amount of time to do an excellent quality work, but more time is not directly translating into more value. In reality, the extra time, not only does it not add much value, think about the 80-20 principle, but it's desperately needed for other projects. So what we know for sure is there's an opportunity cost. Maybe this is time that you no longer have for something that's critically important for you as a leader. You may be so busy just getting through all those tasks, thinking like an administrator, working on your to-do list, but what if you don't have time to lead? What if you don't have time to motivate employees? What if you don't have time to set a vision or to look for things you can improve? I mean, You need this time. It's really critically needed for things where perhaps nobody is tapping on your shoulder and say, hey, it's due on Friday. But guess what? It's important, and now you don't have the time for it. So what you're going to do is allocate the appropriate amount of time for your task and not exceed it. You can definitely do that once you understand the reality, which is the extra time does not create extra value. And for your need for excellence, you can meet that in different ways. I mean, of course, you're going to have some quality control systems in place or processes. There's things you're going to do still to make sure you do outstanding work. That should never be sacrificed. You just don't want to get obsessive about it. So we're going to meet your needs so that you're at peace. You know that you've done well and it's excellent, but we're not seeking perfection anymore. So here's a different example. This is a different situation that is also very, very common in higher education. So imagine that on the one hand, you want to be accessible and helpful, right? But you need to protect your time and set boundaries. So accessible, boundaries. How are you able to do that? So here the false assumption is that people want you to give them attention immediately. So if you have this compulsion when somebody calls or they need something and you feel like, oh, they need me right here, right now, that's actually not true. In reality, people want to have your undivided attention and they want solutions to their problems. They want quality of time, not necessarily quantity, and it may not be urgent at all. You may not need to drop everything to do it right now. Sometimes, yes, sometimes it's a timely crisis, but not the majority of the time. So what I see happen with people who are trying to always be accessible and always make time for people is that if they're busy trying to get something done and they get interrupted, they are feeling an obligation to respond right away, but their mind is on something else. So they're not fully present. Maybe they're not really listening. Maybe they're totally missing what the person is really asking. Or maybe instead of making eye contact for the person to feel like, yes, in this moment, you are the most important thing to me. Maybe they're typing on their keyboard. Maybe they're doing emails. Maybe they're multitasking. And trust me, this does not make people feel good at all. So if you are responding to everything with a sense of urgency, but you're not present, you're really not helping. So I really want you to open your mind to that. Do you really need to answer immediately, or is quality in your response and your presence, your charisma, and your leadership, isn't that more important? I hope I gave you a lot to think about because so many people are frazzled right now, especially this year in 2020, stressed out, frustrated. Our personal lives have been disrupted too. So we're not really doing all the things that used to make us happy, especially here in California, where our state is still pretty much closed and fun is a little bit gone in a lot of ways. So people get more irritable, and it's time to work on presence, mindfulness, and really watching what your energy is like and how you make people feel, how you show up on every Zoom call and how you write every email, what kind of emotions are driving your behavior. But anyway, I digress. New vehicles to satisfy your need for connection can be scheduled when convenient and enjoyable. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be making time to talk to people. Absolutely do. It's important, but do it when it's not actually creating an issue, when it's not costing you so much. So again, still meet your need. You just don't necessarily do it whenever somebody pops up in your day. It needs to be justified, or it should be scheduled for later. Okay, now structure and accountability. So here's what you're going to do. First, you need to start by identifying priorities. You can't have 50 priorities. You need a much smaller number of priorities. Otherwise, you have no priorities at all. So get very clear. What is your job about? What is critically important? What are the things that are urgent, where obviously you need to respond right away? And then for your work, you need to create a plan that includes goals. And sometimes people have annual goals or maybe quarterly goals and they stop there. So if you only have quarterly goals, you have a to-do list. That's how many pages long? Really, really long. And it just doesn't work. So what you want to do is know what you're going to accomplish each month, each week, and even have goals for every single day. When you finish one day, before you stop your work every evening, you should have next day planned out, and you should know exactly what are the maybe 3 things you absolutely must do the next day. You have to have that planned out, because without it, you can't succeed. Second one is healthy boundaries. I touched on that earlier. I have a ton of blogs on that. May have some videos where I will do more. Actually, tell me if you like this format, if you like having videos. You can subscribe to my channel. Take it as a little encouragement to do more of those. I really like sharing free resources. I blog a ton. I've got hundreds of blogs you can read, but I'm not doing a lot of videos. If this is something you enjoy, make sure to let me know, comment, share, subscribe. I think if I see that there's a need for it, I will certainly be much more consistent. You'll get more than one video every year or two. More like once a week would be pretty cool. Okay, and the third one is to communicate new expectations. So when we make changes, there's always that fear. What if people are upset? What if people don't understand? Trust me, they won't, because you're going to communicate what can be expected, how things work. And people will love that. People will have that structure, that clarity is going to go really well, but you do need to communicate. If you just change overnight and nobody really understands what's going on with you, then yeah, you will probably have some issues, but don't do that. Ask me how I'll help you out. Okay, number 3, implement. So now you have your priorities, then you have your plan, and now you're going to implement what we talked about. What I want you to do is at the end of every day, observe how your day unfolded and ask yourself what went right, what went wrong. What do I want to prevent from happening again? Because in the morning, you'll have a very clear intention, but there's always going to be something when you change habits, you're going to see a few things that need to be fine-tuned, and you're going to need to make some adjustments. So you've got to observe. It's a feedback loop mechanism, really evaluate intention in the morning, how your day unfolded, take a look at the end of your workday, and then make corrections as needed. And you've got to be so committed to this, because if you don't keep yourself accountable, nothing's going to change, really. I mean, I can give you all the tools. You can sign up for my time management program if you want, which will give you everything you can possibly need to completely transform how you use your time and create some free time. But learning theory and just being able to lecture other people about it are not going to change your life until you make changes in your behavior. So you've got to get serious about that. All right. So talking about being serious about that, committing to success. So in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. What have you learned today that you're going to implement from now on? So there could be a dozen things or more, but pick at least 1 or 2 things. And I want you to make a commitment to yourself saying, starting today, I am doing this. No excuses. I also would love to hear in the comments, what did you learn about yourself? There may have been something today that's helped you understand. Maybe it's just having a little bit compassion for yourself, understanding that the heart and the brain, as much as they want to serve you well, they get in the way a lot. And I also would love to know, what did you learn today that's helping you understand your coworkers better? I know that when I worked in higher ed, before I got all my coaching certifications and before I worked with so many people, there were some behaviors that made no sense. And I was young, and I was almost going to say stupid, but I really don't believe in self-deprecating humor. I think it's just the expression young and stupid, but you know what I mean? Just not wise yet, just not experienced enough to be able to truly understand what's going on. And when you're young and inexperienced, you expect people to be exactly the way you are, and when they're not, you just don't understand it. So one of the many goals with this little webinar today is to help you develop more understanding of how other people function. Hopefully that's going to help you work better together and get better results together. All right, so for those of you who are looking at this and say, yeah, I really have an issue with time management and I would love to have some free time, I would love to continue to work at an outstanding level, or maybe even raise the bar. I mean, we with most clients, even when we have no intention of getting better work products or improving, sometimes we're just trying to fix some problems. There's always an enormous learning and gain that happens, because when you work with a coach, then you start to have more confidence, you're more calm, your charisma expands, you have that executive presence that everybody is so envious of, you gain more influence, you do more work, opportunities open up. So there's a lot that can be done if you'd like to work with a coach. So you can go to my website, get all the information, and you can contact me there. If you're looking at this thinking, maybe we need some training for my team. Right now in 2020, we don't do much of anything in person, so it would probably be Zoom. But we can still do amazing training. People are engaged, they're used to that tool. It's not an issue, so that's doable. And if you're somebody who would like to work independently, I invite you to take a look at my time management program. It's self-paced, independent study. So you get everything that you need and you implement it when it's convenient for you. I think the issue can be not having accountability, but some people prefer to work on their own. So that's a great solution for them. Again, you can go to my website, thrivinginadmin.com, and then you go to course resources and then courses, and you type and you look at time optimization, or you just click on the link. I'll put it in the comments. I think it's going to be a lot easier. Also, to goodness, right now the price is $47. Seriously, I made it dirt cheap because it bothers me that so many people have such a low quality of life. They're working too hard. So I don't know when you're watching this. I don't know what price will be when you're watching this, but if it's September 2020, go and get it, because for the price of one dinner, you can literally get all the solutions you need to change your life if you're consistent and if you're really studying and implementing everything. All right. Free resources. Always a big fan of sharing free resources. I'd love it if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, I haven't posted a whole lot only because I'm busy doing real work with coaching clients and training and speaking engagement even from home. So I have not put a ton there, but with a little encouragement, I'm going to put a lot more because I really like to give back. And not everybody makes time to read blogs, but they watch videos. So subscribe, let me know what you would like more of, and I'll be happy to do that. And of course, go to my website for articles, videos on time management, leadership development, career advancement, interpersonal relationships. There's just so much there. I think you're going to love it if you're a leader in higher ed. Trust me, there's going to be so many things you want to look into. Take a look. And what you can do too is subscribe to my monthly e-newsletter, because that way you're going to get, every time there are new resources, you're going to get one monthly reminder with all of the links. So that way you don't miss anything. And since everybody gets too many emails, I only send one per month. So you'd better open it on the first of each month. You're going to get just one. Don't lose it because you're not getting another for 30 more days. Nobody has time to read a gazillion newsletters. So just have this one and open it when you get it. And connect with me on social media. That would be really great. I'd love to see what you're doing. I'd love to see what's happening at your college or at your university. And it's such a great way to develop relationships and support one another. So I hope you do that. I hope that you connect with me real soon. And I just want to say thank you very, very, very much. It was a pleasure to speak with you today. I know some of you are in the time management program, others may be clients, and many others may be complete strangers. So I hope that you enjoyed it, that you got plenty of value, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.